Hey everyone, this is Bunny. Today we're doing something a little different while I paint these pillars that you're seeing right now. We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the game that is near and dear to my heart. Specifically, we're going to talk about how it's changed through the years, how the world around it helped shape each edition, and what it was like to actually live and play through all of that. I've been rolling dice for a long time, and I've played every version from the very first one to the newest 2024 edition. Yes, that means I am not young. But if you've ever wondered how we got from a few pages of rules in a box to the massive, connected world we have today, grab your brush or your dice and maybe a cup of tea, because we're going to dive into it. I want to start all the way back at the very beginning, 1974. The world itself was a strange mix of optimism and chaos. The Vietnam War was ending, and fantasy novels were finally gaining traction, and people were itching to escape into other worlds. They were itching to use their imagination. That's when Dungeons and Dragons appeared. A small brown box that quietly changed everything. It was unassuming, but it would have a huge impact. Calling it a game might be a little generous. It was really more of an idea. You had some basic instructions and a few dice, and the freedom to imagine whatever you wanted. There weren't enough rules to cover most situations, so we kind of just made them up on the spot as we went. It was easier than trying to figure out what was written and how it might apply, because so many times it simply did not. But the idea was there, the base. And honestly, the chaos was part of the charm. We were all figuring it out together, scribbling notes in the margins and using sticky notes as best we could, building house rules that made sense for the worlds we were creating. Every group played a little differently. I played in 2 different groups back then, and they were not the same. We didn't have the same set of rules, and we certainly didn't even try. If one party had to roll 3 dice to climb a wall, and the other party was just wanting to make it up on the spot as they went along, that was fine. No one cared. The fun was in the storytelling. We weren't about to get bogged down in rules. We just wanted to have fun, to be social, to hang out with each other and use our imaginations like we did when we were kids. Some of us still were very much kids. It was a creative outlet. But there weren't a lot of rules and there weren't a lot of guidelines. It was rough around the edges. Yep, I won't deny that. But it was revolutionary. And it was the first time a lot of us realized that we didn't just have to read about heroes. If we wanted to, we could be the heroes, even if just for a few hours a couple of times a month. Not every day, not all the time, but just here and there. Just a few years later, well, advanced Dungeons and Dragons arrived on the scene. The late 70s, they were a creative explosion. This was the birth of Star Wars, the spread of home computers. Not everyone had one. Most people didn't. But they were starting to be a thing. And there was a growing sense that imagination could be serious business, and that maybe adults weren't quite ready to pass up the chance to be creative. It meant something. Suddenly, D&D got some structure. We got the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. These gorgeous, intimidating tomes that felt like sacred texts. They were so important to us because they were an anchor in an otherwise chaotic world. I still have my old Dungeon Master's Guide, the first Dungeon Master's Guide I ever bought, with my own money. Well, with my mom's money. But you get the point. It's a little rough. It's been decades, obviously. It still has its cover in most of the pages, but if you grabbed the cover and shook it hard enough, those pages wouldn't stay put. That's okay. The spine is cracked and it smells of basement dust and nostalgia. But it's still readable, at least when the pages aren't missing. And when I look back on this Dungeon Master's Guide, you realize that the rules contradict each other constantly. And thinking back, it didn't matter. We learned which tables to ignore and which made sense in the moment, and we learned through play exactly what would be applicable when, even when the rules weren't clear. We figured out which spells to fudge and which monsters you should quietly tone down before your party got completely wiped out. We also learned which monsters needed to be dialed up a notch, because some of them were just too easy. That's okay. It's fine. It was chaotic and wonderful. It was a game that rewarded creativity just as much as it rewarded planning. And back then, you didn't just play D&D. You belonged to it. You were part of a growing underground of dreamers and storytellers. Yeah, we were nerds. But that was okay. It didn't bother us. Because we had each other, and we had this game that was anchoring us. And then we moved on. The early 80s arrived, and the world was changing so fast. Arcades ruled, and home video games were booming. Simplicity became the new trend. So D&D released a new approach, the basic and expert box sets. And these would eventually be expanded into companion, master, and immortal. These were bright and colorful and designed to bring in beginners, designed to invite in those who just weren't interested in advanced Dungeons and Dragons. This was accessible. This made a lot more sense. And each box took you further in power, from a new adventurer to an immortal being. It even came with a brand new setting, Mystara, which had its own charm. It wasn't perfect. It was certainly not the worlds we know today through D&D. But back then, we were amazed. And I'll be honest, I liked it. I did. But it felt a little too tidy for me. I missed the rough edges. It seems silly to say it now, but I liked the chaos. The sense that the rules might break at any moment, and that you might be truly cast adrift and have to make it up for good. I liked that. Still, it made the game more approachable, and I got to watch a whole new generation of players join in. It was like watching your favorite band suddenly get popular. You're proud, but there's a part of you that misses those basement concerts. That's how it was for me with this D&D. This new D&D, I liked it. It was fine. But for me, personally, it was missing something. By 1989, the world had gone corporate. Moral panics were in full swing, and D&D had somehow become a scapegoat for everything parents didn't understand. Some of us were accused of being devil worshippers. People were genuinely worried that pretending to be a wizard might lead their kids to the dark side. It seems silly now, but it was a real fear. So when 2nd edition arrived, it came squeaky clean. The artwork was softer and the tone was family friendly. The demons and the devils were politely shown the door. For many of us, it felt like the wild heart of the game had been tamed. But here's the thing. 2nd edition also gave us worlds. We got Forgotten Realms and Dark Sun and Planescape and Ravenloft. Incredible settings that expanded the lore and shaped what D&D storytelling could be. So while I resented it a little for being kind of sanitized, there was a reason for it. It was a reflection of the times. Things couldn't be quite so rough. It was a strange balance. The edges were sanded off, but the imagination grew wider than ever. You could tell the creators loved it just as much as we did, even if the rest of the world was still clutching their pearls. And then, time continued to move forward. A new millennium was upon us. If you're a newer player, you won't remember this at all. But the new millennium was a big deal. Everything was changing again. The internet was exploding. People were connecting online, and the gaming world was starting to embrace precision and structure. 3rd edition dropped right into that culture. For the first time, every roll, every action, every rule used the same core mechanic. Roll a 20-sided die, add your modifier, and hope for the best. It was clean, logical, and very modern. I remember how exciting it was to have so many options. You could finally build a character that was uniquely you. I'll admit, before this point, before 3rd edition, characters were a little flat. That's why so many people still play 3rd edition, because it was when the game started to blossom. You wanted to be a half-orc wizard who also dabbled in alchemy? Go for it. The flexibility was incredible. And it opened the door for new people all over again. The only downside was the math. There was a lot of it. If you've ever played 3rd edition, you'll know what I mean. 5th edition seems mathy until you look at 3rd. In some groups, I'll admit, we started playing a little fast and loose with the numbers. We started rounding things off or skipping a few rolls just to keep things flowing, to be honest. This was, and still is, an edition where if you get caught up in the minutia, in the details, it can take you forever to make any progress. And that can be boring. So most of the groups that I knew were playing fast and loose with the rules. But that's always been the charm of Dungeons & Dragons. You can play fast and loose with the rules. But 3rd edition had heart. It felt like D&D had grown up right alongside us. And we were happy with it. But just 3 years later, version 3.3 arrived. It was meant to fix things, and it did. But it also unleashed an avalanche of content. New classes, and feats, and races, prestige options, so many books that your backpack needed its own saving throw. We loved it, but it was a lot. Every player had their own favorite expansion, and no two groups played quite the same way. It reflected the era perfectly. The early internet, and the message boards, and the fan site, and that more is more attitude. If you could imagine it, there was probably a rule book for it somewhere, So we went from not enough rules to cover all the situations to probably too many rules. But we enjoyed it. We had fun. Life was good. But by 2008, video games ruled pop culture. World of Warcraft was at its peak, and everyone wanted to capture that level of structure and success. D&D tried to adapt with 4th edition to this new world. Every class had a role: defender, striker, controller, and combat became faster and a lot more tactical. It worked beautifully as a system, but for a lot of us it didn't really feel like Dungeons and Dragons anymore. The storytelling took a backseat to the mechanics. And for us, for the players at its core, D&D had always been about the story. Everything else could take a back seat. It was clean and balanced and efficient, but this edition lacked that wild spark. If I wanted something that rigid, I'd have just played a video game. A lot of us were underwhelmed with 4th edition. Even now, if someone asked me to choose between 2nd edition and 4th, I'll take 2nd every time, flaws and all, because 4th edition just didn't feel like the worlds we had not known before. It felt sterile and boring, and D&D should never be boring. But it was okay. We were only a few years away from 2014, the year everything changed again. Streaming was taking off. Critical Role was showing the world how fun storytelling could be, and people were craving connection. 5th edition hit the perfect balance. It kept the D20 system, but made it simpler and faster. We weren't so bogged down in rolling. There was less math and more story, and more freedom to just play. This was when I really leaned back in. 4th edition had kind of alienated me, but 5th edition, that brought me back. By this point, I had adult money and a love of miniatures, so I went all in. I painted, I collected, I introduced new people to the game, and it was easy to teach them. You didn't need to know 100 tables or memorize every spell. You just needed an idea and a few dice. A lot of dice. A lot of us got obsessed with dice, and still are obsessed with dice. We blame this edition. It felt like D&D had come home, not just to the table, but to the culture. Everyone was playing and everyone was welcome. And then the show Stranger Things showed up, and even more people played. And it got crazy and wonderful. And these days D&D is everywhere. And it's because of 5th edition, Critical Role, and Stranger Things. So if you love D&D today, those 3 things are the reason why. And now that brings us to now, today. The 2024 revision, sometimes called 1 Dungeons & Dragons. Some people are calling it 5.5. Some people are just calling it 2024 edition. It doesn't matter. The world is more digital now than it ever has been. We're using virtual tabletops and AI tools and online play spaces that would have seemed like science fiction in the 70s. Today, if you can't find a group locally, you can go online and find groups that way. You can pay for a professional dungeon master to give you an adventure like you've never had before. It's a different world. This new edition tries to merge the best of both worlds, the digital convenience with the heart of tabletop storytelling. And while I am giving it a fair shot, I'll admit, I still love the clatter of real dice on a wooden table with everyone together. And it's not that this edition is all digital, it's certainly not. We are still rolling dice. And it can be played alongside 5e. It can be. I'm just not sure about it yet. I think a lot of people are that way. We're not really sure if we like this new stuff. But if you're just coming in to Dungeons & Dragons, if you are new, it's pretty approachable. It's more approachable than 5. I'll admit that. And it's added a lot of stuff. I won't deny that either. But so far, I'm finding it just a little lacking. Maybe that won't be true forever. I'm giving it a fair shot. I'm going to play a few more games with a couple of different groups. But we'll see where it lands. I love the smell of paint and primer and the way miniatures bring imagination to life. So, it seems like as people are embracing this new edition, they seem to be almost moving away from those miniatures. And that is hard for me. I love the miniatures, even if they're barely glued together and fallen apart or the paint has worn off. I love them. I'll always explore what's new, but 5th edition might be where I stay for a while. And I know a lot of people think that too, but I do think we should give this 2024 edition a fair shake. I think we should try. I'm going to try. I'm going to see if I like it. But I'm not ready to abandon 5. Not yet. Looking back, it's amazing how each version of Dungeons & Dragons reflects the time it was born in. The creative chaos of the 1970s, the moral panic of the 1980s, the precision of the 2000s, and the desire to reconnect today. But no matter how many rule books we go through, the heart of D&D has never changed. It's about storytelling and laughter and problem solving and friendship. It's about that spark of imagination that makes you lean forward and say, hey, I want to do something crazy. Do you want to come? It's an era of magic, of sorcery, of battles and heroes and monsters. And I hope games like D&D and the other tabletop games are here for many years to come. And we can always go back to the editions we love. I do. I played a 2nd edition game not too long ago, and it reminded me that even the editions that we didn't love, they were something special too. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below and tell me which edition was your favorite, or if you're considering going back and learning a little bit more about editions gone by. I'd love to hear your stories. I hope you'll be back with us next time. Bye!